Hare Krishna. Uh, Hare Krishna, good morning. So today we'll be reading Canto 3, Chapter 3, Text 21. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Imam Lokam Amum Chaiva Ramayan Sutaram Yadun Reme Kshana Daya Data Kshanastri Kshana Sauhrida. Word for word. Imam, this. Lokam, earth. Amum, and the other worlds. Cha, also. Eva, certainly. Ramayan, pleasing. Sutaram, specifically. Yadun, the Yadus. Reme, enjoyed. Kshanadaya, by night. Data, given by. Kshana, leisure. Stri, with women. Kshana, conjugal love. Sauhrida, friendship. Translation. The Lord enjoyed his pastimes both in this world and in other worlds, higher planets, specifically in the association of the Yadu dynasty. At leisure hours offered by night, he enjoyed the friendship of conjugal love with women. Purport. The Lord enjoyed in this world with his pure devotees. Although he is the personality of Godhead and is transcendental to all material attachment, he nevertheless exhibited much attachment for his pure devotees on the earth, as well as for the demigods, who engage in his service in the heavenly planets as powerful delegated directors in the management of all material activities. He displayed special attachment for his family members, the Yadus, as well as for his 16,000 wives, who had the opportunity to meet him in the leisure hours of night. All these attachments of the Lord are manifestations of his internal potency, of which the external potency is only a shadow representation. In the Skanda Purana, Prabhashkanda, in the topics between Lord Shiva and Gauri, there is confirmation of his internal potential manifestations. There is mention of the Lord's meeting with 16,000 cowherd damsels, although he is the Hamsa, transcendental supersoul, and maintainer of all living entities. The 16,000 cowherd damsels are a display of 16 varieties of internal potencies. This will be more elaborately explained in the 10th canto. It is said there that Lord Krishna is just like the moon, and the internal potential damsels are like the stars around the moon. Om Jnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So my class will be relatively short today. I don't have too many points to pull other than what Prabhupada has already mentioned in the commentary, but just reading the translation again, the Lord enjoyed his pastimes both in this world and in other worlds, higher planets, specifically in the association of the Yadu dynasty. At leisure hours offered by night, he enjoyed the friendship of conjugal love with women. So we're hearing about Lord Krishna's, kind of like a high level sharing of Krishna's time outside of Vrindavan, specifically his time in Dwaraka right now. And so Uddhava is explaining how Krishna, he says that he enjoyed both with the heavenly the residents of the heavenly planets, as well as his his 16,000 wives in Dwarka at the leisure hours of the night. And Prabhupada is very appropriately explaining in the purport that, especially, as we have experience of, understanding already, Krishna's pastimes, his Vrindavan pastimes, his Dwaraka pastimes, they can all be very, very bewildering, especially if we're looking at them from our point of view and our angle of experience of what we consider to be reality. So, if we imagine someone like ourselves associating with 16,000 women or enjoying in the heavenly planets, then these are all our vision is immediately kind of sullied by the material point of view. But Prabhupada is explaining that Krishna's quote unquote enjoyment, even when we use the word enjoyment, it already has a connotation of some type of material contamination. But when the word enjoyment is used in the context of Krishna, there's no question of any type of material tinge. Krishna's enjoyment is actually completely spiritual, because Krishna himself is completely spiritual, and because his angle of vision is his interaction with his own energies. In this case, Prabhupada's explaining Krishna is enjoying his own internal energy. And he also alludes to the same kind of episode later on in the 10th canto when Krishna is enjoying with all of, again, the word enjoying, with all the gopis of Vrindavan. He's described as the moon surrounded by so many stars. And this is also completely spiritual. It is, this point is just coming to me now, but we're seeing how, I'm just noticing in my own consciousness, like literally when I use the word enjoyment, there's, especially just because of you could say like ISKCON conditioning, there are certain words that kind of have certain connotations. And the word enjoyment is one such word in the ISKCON world, where you hear the word enjoyment and you immediately are programmed to think material, contamination is involved. And this is, the same word enjoyment being used in relation to Krishna's activities, and there's no tinge of any material contamination. So this is the main point that Prabhupada is bringing out from this, when we're hearing about Krishna's enjoyment and the time that he spent with the heavenly planet residents, as well as his 16,000 wives in Dwaraka. We can understand that his quote unquote enjoyment is completely spiritual, and that it is simply an exhibition of his interaction with his own internal energy. So I really don't have anything much else to add to this verse. This is the main point that is being made here. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this? I apologize. I know it's quite short, but if anybody has any corrections as well.
Prabhu.
Yes, Masti. Hare Krishna.
Says, all good. Srila Prabhupada.
Oh, gosh.
Thank you. Even though it's a short class, you have brought up this very nice point. I was actually contemplating this from yesterday morning class. Radha Kunj Bihari Prabhu, he mentioned, he actually narrated one very beautiful pastime of Krishna interacting with the other gopis, stealing from their home, and how they were trying to trick, but indeed were tricked by Krishna. So, as I was hearing, I went to a different side, and I'm like, oh, you can actually do that with Krishna, and that loving reciprocation and all that is so wonderful. But Balaram Prasad Prabhu very beautifully mentioned, Mataji, Rajavasis can do that. We cannot. That immediately shifted the perspective. Otherwise, as you're saying, when we are not mature enough, when we don't have that kind of spiritual transcendental vision, it's very easy to see through that our material vision, whatever we have right now, and just get carried away. And I feel like it's very subtle, and we can even go to this kind of sahajiya behavior. Oh, Krishna is like that, I can do whatever, kind of a thing. So I just would like to hear from you, based on your understanding, when we hear these direct pastimes of Krishna, of course, gopis and queens is like the highest, but even the elderly gopis in Vrindavan, or with his boyfriends, cowherd boys, uh, I feel when we are not mature enough, or the sequence of Prabhupada again and again emphasizes, we need to go from the first canto to 10th canto to really understand Krishna is the supreme and he is transcendental. That becomes like so strong. Until we
Yeah.
don't have that, we may have this tinge and we may go here and there. So just would like to hear from you. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a nice point that you're bringing up, and thank you for also mentioning the discussion that happened yesterday. Um, I don't know that I have an answer, but just sharing my own thoughts that I also continuously grapple with kind of two visions of Krishna, and these are the two visions that we're kind of hearing, which is I grapple with the vision of Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead, who we should be approaching with awe and reverence, and with utmost respect. And then on the other side, there is the Brajvasi vision of Krishna, which is that Krishna is a mischievous boy, and we are aspiring to, for those who are aspiring for a like a particular relationship with Krishna in one of the rasas that are present in Vrindavan, then we are aspiring to see Krishna as this quote unquote like imperfect kind of mischievous uh, boy. And so, what I'm thinking about is like when I'm Indra Prabhu is coming to my mind just because I've been reading his book recently, and he actually, he first of all, he had like, I personally believe that he had prema bhakti. He had full prema for Shamsundar, and but he also did not. He like literally he let it out. He held a lot of it in, and he a lot of it was private, but he also let a lot of it out. One particular story that's coming to mind is one story that Jay Jagannath Prabhu has shared a few times in his classes of when Jay Jagannath Prabhu was in Vrindavan. He was sitting in a Bhagavatam class, and Ananda Prabhu wasn't giving the class; he was in the audience, and he was kind of like in the courtyard. If anybody's been to Vrindavan during, there's like a courtyard part of the temple room, and so he was on this raised up platform, sitting, hearing the class, and the devotee that was speaking was describing. It was part of the 10th canto. There's a description of one of the gopis drawing shapes in the sand with their foot as like a exhibition of like agitation. And Jai Jagannath Prabhu remembers seeing Ainda Prabhu just mimicking that movement of drawing with his toe shapes in the sand, and he shares, J. Jagannath Prabhu shares that like that just seeing that like kind of practice of what was being heard as like as like an exhibition of an emotion that was being shown towards Krishna by this gopi, and then Ayendra Prabhu then practicing that, kind of almost like a, a, a visual representation of like his internal practice. It created an impression, and so I know this is just kind of like a lot. I'm saying a lot, but all I'm saying is that what I believe is that ultimately nobody can judge what anybody else's standing is other than our own. I mean, of course, there's like the Madhyamas are able to see the different gradations of devotees, but just like, disregarding kind of like this, the technicalities of, who can judge who is a devotee and who's not. I genuinely believe that like sometimes we come across devotees who are a little more quote unquote eccentric. They carry around their Gopal deities and they show love for Krishna in their own ways. And then we also come across devotees who are very rigid and very kind of like, you could say like Aishwarya based. And it's really hard to judge for another person what their love of what type of love they have for God. And I think I would just conclude my ramble by saying that my understanding is that there is no wrong way to approach God ultimately. So there is that vision that like only the Brajavasis are qualified to love Krishna in that particular mood. But there's also the vision of we are aspiring to have that love for Krishna. And so even if we're trying to practice that love in an imperfect state, if we're practicing with the right intention of eventually inculcating that genuine mood for Krishna as the Brajavasis have, that there's no loss. I think of that verse. There's a verse that in the first canto that says that like, no amount of devotional practice can go on. There's no, basically that 1:5:17, I think, basically saying that like, no amount of effort put into devotional practice will go on. It is all valuable, but any amount of endeavor on the material side is invaluable, is not valuable. Sorry. So I'm sorry, that was so much of a ramble, but I hope there was some. I also grapple with this, but it's a good point. I apologize for my ramble.
No, not at all. Ramble. It's very helpful because sometimes judging others is one aspect, judging ourselves also, and I understand the aspect. Sometimes Krishna may actually give us the genuine attraction, and especially when we hear this, Vrindavan, particularly with Radha Shyam Sundar and some pastimes, it's just like, wow, it literally feels like transported to somewhere else. I just get so helplessly attracted, which is a wonderful thing. So I'm really happy to hear this side, though we know we have to be careful, we have to guard ourselves not to become that side. But at the same time, we cannot say, no, I'm an neophyte bhakta, I cannot have these feelings for Krishna. We cannot deny that also. Yeah, we can consider it as, some special mercy. Yeah, and just
exactly.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to become attracted.
Yeah, particularly in some kirtans or also something, it's just like completely in a different space. I'm like, hey, wait a second, am I really there? Or like, what is this happening in the heart? But this is so beautiful. And I'm also thinking about the nectar of devotion, right? When the kirtaniya is singing based on their mood and their attraction, we may feel that reflection in our hearts. As long as we don't have that, malintention of projecting ourselves or like doing something. Yeah, I really appreciated that point. If you're having that sincere intention, even if we go here and there, I think Krishna may guide us. Guru Krishna devotees. Yeah, that's very beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm not sure. Does anybody else have any comments or questions
Hare
on
Krishna.
this? Yes,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna. Prabhuji, please accept
Hare-
humble obeisance. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Sandhya Mataji, you please go ahead, Mataji. I'll speak afterwards.
no, you can go first, Prabhu. You can
Okay,
go first.
Mataji. So, Prabhuji, 2 or 3 points come to my mind. The first one is about grappling with the awe and reverence of the Supreme Lord versus, the Vrindavan Krishna. So, if you really look at south of India, you have the Tirupati Balaji temple or most of the other Vishnu temples. All of these are in awe and reverence, where every day the service to the Lord is done in that mood of servitude. Whereas when you go to the north, particularly Brajamandal and other places, it's all in almost Sakya or in other rasas, So I just wanted to point out that. Then coming to the usage of the word enjoyment, you made some good points about that. I also grapple with this particular thing, and multiple times I really go back to the dictionary hoping to find a different meaning for the word conjugal. I unfortunately, the dictionaries don't contain the spiritual meaning, but I keep trying, because when you're reading, sometimes, the material conditioning takes over and it tinges, and I put the book away, hoping to clear my mind and come back, but I'm still struggling with that. And what comes to my mind in those times is I come across Shishupal. He's the one who would blaspheme the Lord. He considered the Lord nothing more than a normal human being doing normal activities, but he was being glorified by everyone else for doing just mundane things. Versus Shishupal felt he was greater than the Lord and he was not being considered, the envious mood. And I try to feel like, oh, maybe I'm behaving like Shishupal. I need to tone down. I don't have to dwell on some of these matters, particularly the meanings of certain words, because probably I don't understand it yet. Then there was a third aspect that came across when Amritkeli Mataji spoke about how the Kirtaniyas can lift our spirits to a different plane. We are actually reading, a little ahead. I think it's the 15th chapter, description of Kingdom of God, in which, the description of bees and birds are given, how in the Vaikuntha Loka, how all of these are singing and happily going about. But even when somebody like the honey bee starts buzzing, and it's a high shrill pitch, but it's the glories of the Lord. So what do the other beautiful birds who can, with beautiful voices, what do? They all tone down so that they can hear the glories of the Lord coming from the bees humming. So you know so just thought I will share these things, how in the association of devotees everything can become elevated, and we can get cleansed ourselves even for those small moments of association. Thank you, Prabhuji. That's all I had.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Prabhu. And I can also relate to that, by the way, that experience of reading, especially like sections where it's describing Krishna's relation with the gopis. And I definitely notice my mind equating it to like how I would imagine an interaction like that being in the material world. And I think to your what's the word? Like, I mean, what is good about like our kind of devotional conditioning is that we are conditioned to recognize that our mind is transferring Krishna's spiritual activity to what our equation of what that would be in a material sense. But the fact that we're recognizing that is what is good, So I would say, like, even though we're not at the point of, you're describing about yourself, and I'm also saying I'm experiencing the same thing, even though I'm not at the point of being able to read pastimes about Krishna and the gopis and immediately see the spiritual side of it. I would say that, again, this is another area where we can give ourselves a little bit of like grace, that at least we're able to recognize that I'm seeing this from a material point of view, even though I know this is not material. And that's, I'm endeavoring to see beyond the material and see the spiritual side of this. So like that recognition alone is, in the right direction in my opinion. So anyway, thank you for sharing that, Prabhu. Sandhya Mataji, I think, had something.
Hare Krishna, Mukunda. You wanted it. You said it will be a short class. It's going to be a long one, it seems. Thank you for, it's a beautiful discussion. A very nice class. And what I was thinking is about it's mentioned that somewhere I've heard it's mentioned in Bhagavatam probably, the gopis, they seem to be in their beds, sleeping in there, and Krishna also seemed to be in his bed. But the Rasa Leela was happening, and the Rasa Leela was happening for the span of Brahma's night. So I wanted to speak a little bit about these two things. I mean, were they actually, their bodies seem to be in their beds?
Oh, Mataji, I honestly, I don't have an answer to that, but if anybody has, they can share. But I would not be surprised if Krishna was creating the illusion of them being in their beds while simultaneously being at the rasa dance. But I personally don't know about that.
And they were away for Brahma's night.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, Krishna is the master of time, so it's no surprise that could be a possibility.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Answer to that?
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hare Krishna, Mukunda. Thank you
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
for the beautiful class. I would not be able to speak on Sandhya Mataji's comment at all, but just relating to the class and relating to the discussion, I just want to speak from my own, my own way of connecting with Krishna. And as always, I like to keep it very simple. So different, like you were mentioning about devotees, you cannot judge and all that, but each one has a way of connecting to Krishna, whatever makes them feel connected. So, and then the topic of enjoyment with it. So the way I look at it is, okay, just like the father and the son, or the father and the daughter, you have that awe and reverence also for your father, but at the same time, you can also connect as a friend, or, as like you can enjoy with the father too. So that's how I feel that, okay, Krishna is our supreme father. And why can't we have a relation, and why can't we have those feelings? I mean, there's nothing wrong to feel connected in whichever way, as long as our consciousness, our mind is in the right place, So like all of you talking about, like Amrita Kalimataji, you mentioned about the mood in the kirtan versus the mood in a lecture versus the mood if you're, listening to a senior devotee. It may change, but this is how I feel, that it's okay to connect. If you feel happy and connected with Krishna by serving him, whichever mood, as a child or as a father or as a friend, whatever, Krishna knows what we have in our mind. And that's the thought I live with. So sometimes when I don't have that awe and reverence in me when I'm serving the Lord, that's how I feel that it's okay to connect in a different relationship too. You know.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you for sharing that. And I was, I'm reflecting again on another point that I hear Jay Jagannath Prabhu make often, which is like, when we have anything that we have to pray for example, we're kind of encouraged to only approach Krishna with our most pure prayer of becoming the servant of his servant, and not asking for anything else. But kind of the glory of a devotee of Krishna is that they approach him with any desire that they may have. And so that even may include, that does include, for those of us who are imperfect at our imperfect stages of devotion, we have imperfect desires, we have material desires. But when we approach Krishna with that desire, then that only serves to strengthen our relationship with him. So, to your point of, even when we're noticing that we may not have like the proper regard for Krishna, but we're still approaching him, that itself is like a credit in our direction. So yeah, the glory of a devotee of Krishna is that they're dedicated to him. So, and his devotees. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, we can stop there. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your very nice reflections, and thanks for allowing me to give such a short class, but it allowed for us to have some discussion. Yeah. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.